to talk to you guys a little bit about this book right here. And no, this isn't going to be a book review. We're actually going to be visiting a museum that has to do with this man who wrote this book. A long time ago, in a community that was not so big at the time of Branson, Missouri, a man named Harold Bell Wright wrote a book. And this book was reimagined into a play, which still to this day is a part of the Branson landscape. This was Shepherd of the Hills. It was something that swept the country. It was a tale of simplicity, and at the time, it was a tale of exactly what was going on in the world of Branson. Now there is a museum dedicated to Mr. Harold Bell Wright. Located within the Toy Museum, this is one of the sub-museums that you can find here in Branson. There are so many interesting things whenever you dive in and start looking just under the surface. This particular museum is a smaller museum, however, the impact of this museum is great. Now, one of my own personal favorite stories that I have heard that has come from Mr. Harold Bell Wright is that Ronald Reagan actually has written specifically to the Bell Wright family and said that after reading one of his books, his life changed, accepted God into his life, and he began to be a better man. And they actually have this written document on official presidential letterhead right here in Branson for you to see. It's exceptional. And of course, I have a strange tie to Ronald Reagan, so I was fascinated. But before the Shepherd of the Hills, that printer of Udell's was the book that put him on the map. And here you will find several different pieces from that book. The Shepherd of the Hills was actually the second book that he created. And this one was one that to this day you can still find being recreated out at the Shepherd of the Hills Parkway. These illustrations right here are some of the inspirations for the Shepherd of the Hills that we see today. But from there, the books continued to roll, and there are several different books featured along this wall right here, all of which were so well received and widely thought to be some of the best to come out of not only the Ozarks, but the state of Missouri. Now, Harold Bell Wright was a devout Christian and even a preacher, and he shared his words with others in a variety of different ways, well beyond the books that he had created. He actually preached for a while in a church, he shared the word of God with others, and he carried with him his faith in all he did. And that was apparent also through the writings that he later found to be his passion. Many of his stories became so well known that they were adapted into the big screen. And over time, his popularity continued to grow. Though his popularity grew, he remained humble, and despite the fact that he had to later move away from the Ozark area, which he once called home, due to his health, he always kept grounded here in the Ozarks as his stories lived on. And now I'm about to get to show you some of the cool things that were affiliated with Mr. Bell Wright, who are right here in the museum, forever memorializing his legacy in Branson. Though he began with simple beginnings and few possessions, his popularity allowed him fine china and beautiful embroidered things. And he adorned it with things that would make him happy, such as flowers, which though hard to come by in the Arizona desert where he settled, could be easily achieved through ornate, beautiful pieces like these. Some of these items were from the Hopi tribes and the Western Apaches, which would have been native to the areas which he later settled in within Arizona. This is the original handwritten version of The Shepherd of the Hills. Many of these items were items from his home in Tucson, including the carpet that we see behind us. There was a proclamation made by the Office of the Governor of the State of Missouri in regards to Harold Bell Wright. And yet another piece right there. The ornate detail we're looking at right now actually was from a purchase of Mrs. Wright for her bedroom. It was a portion of her bedroom set that was from Italy. It was all hand carved in 1915 by a very skilled craftsman. And this is one of the trunks that went along with this, depicting a really beautiful scene. This is a Chinese camphor chest for storing blankets from around 1900. Now obviously, as we walk through these halls and see these pieces like this one right here, we get a little taste as to what it would have been to be in their home at the time. It's not going to tell the full story, obviously, but it's a fascinating piece in the overall story. Now, to put all the pieces of this together, I do encourage you to read a little bit more into the Shepherd of the Hills and the legacy that's here in Branson. And when you're here, come and check out the program, The Shepherd of the Hills. I hope you have enjoyed coming with me today to the Harold Bell Wright Museum here in Branson. If you have, make sure that you check out those other things that I mentioned. You won't regret it. Until next time, guys, bye!